The tempest is raging. Oh, the billows are tossing high. The sky is overshadowed with blackness. Oh, no shelter is nigh. Carest thou not that we perish. Oh, how can thou lie asleep? It seems like each moment so madly is threatening. In the angry deep. Get up, Jesus, because the waves obey your will. Peace be still. Peace be still. Peace be still. The winds and the waves, let's go, shall obey your will. And all you got to say, oh, Jesus.
Well, good evening, beloved, and welcome to another broadcast of the First Baptist Church at Broad Avenue, 2835 Broad Avenue, right in the heart of Memphis, Tennessee, in the Binghamton community. We're so glad that you've joined us again on another Bible study night, and we hope that you get to join us as often as you can on YouTube and Facebook and also on WLMT. Listen, we also come on Channel 24 in the overnight hours, in the wee hours of the morning, because we recognize that there are people who are up all times of the day working and also doing other things. They are getting off work, or some just can't sleep at night. So we wanted to put a broadcast on the air just to be with those who needed comfort in the late night hours. And so we would invite you to look on Channel 24 as well for our broadcast. Several church announcements that I want to share with you. That we have passed the point of accepting resumes for the accounts payable position. We've had some outstanding applicants that we're going to begin to interview. So thank you at this point, but we have closed the portal and we will not be accepting any more resumes at this particular point in time. Also want to inform you about a very important community meeting that's going to take place in person at the church and virtually. More information will be shown for you to log on and to do that. But there are some proposed community changes that are taking place in Binghamton. And one of them involves the closure of Scott Street on the Poplar Avenue end. We recognize that this will drastically reroute and impair the flow of traffic in our community. And we really feel as if there could be an alternative measure taken. I have teamed up with other community agencies, the Binghamton Development Corporation, and many of the Binghamton advocacy groups, which are very strong, CDCs and other community development corporation-based groups. And we are teaming up to bring our collective efforts together so that we can say, no, let's not close down the street closures in our community. We don't want, for instance, an ambulance to have to reroute when a person is in an emergency situation. We realize that there are times that people need to have access or egress from a particular community. So we want as many of our streets to stay open as possible. Please get this information, log on at the appropriate time, weigh in, make your voice heard. We will also have a petition for you to sign so you can know how to say, we don't want Scott Street closed. Please do that for us. Finally, we want to dedicate a portion of this Bible study broadcast and invite you to continue to fast and pray with us during the period of time in which we are selecting our new police chief for the city of Memphis. First of all, let me send out a commendation to the committee that sought out the candidates, and let me congratulate all of the candidates who have come to this point in their career where their service, their qualifications, and their dedication has led them to seek this position. All of them, as I understand, were very well qualified people whom have given their lives literally to serving others and protecting others, and in many cases to the administration of police departments across the United States and some here locally. Whenever these kinds of choices are before a leader like Mayor Strickland and like the team that he appointed, it is always difficult. I would like to thank them for their service and thank them for always looking out for what was good in Memphis. Congratulations also to Director Rollins on retirement and to Interim Director Mike Ryle as he assumes the responsibility. But we are very blessed and fortunate that a candidate did come forward, and in the selection of this particular candidate, it was not a rejection of the others. It was simply to say this is the candidate that we feel is best suited at this time to lead the Memphis Police Department. That person is none other than Durham Police Chief Saralyn C.J. Davis. Over a 33-year outstanding career, she has worked her way to the top in both the city of Atlanta and Durham, North Carolina. She was so close to being the chief in Atlanta, but over 30 years there, and then an additional 5 years or so, I believe, in Durham, where crime trends have gone in the right direction. She is also the immediate past president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. NOBLE is a highly ranked organization of black law enforcement professionals, and to be able to attract a person of this caliber who has appeared on CNN, Good Morning America, because of her expertise in areas of police reform. That is a high mark for the city of Memphis. This is a candidate who has come to this city or is eligible now or available now to this city, and we should do everything we can do to pray for the right person to be at the helm of our police department. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in our Bible study, but she has also testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on matters of police reform in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing, what I call the crucifixion on concrete. She has been featured in many, many articles, and literally people all around the United States respect her for the work that she has done, the groundbreaking work. I met with her, and I met with other pastors in the community to talk about her vision and view. She was straightforward. She was very down to earth, and I believe she's a person who is ready to lead the Memphis Police Department. In just a few minutes, we're going to show about a 30-minute excerpt of an interview that she did. This is important for us. But I want to talk about the biblical reasons that this is important, not just for us as individuals, not just for the church, but really it's in the will of God. As you may recall, recently I preached a sermon on be at peace. One of the things that Jesus said to his disciples post-resurrection, but he taught them in the days leading up to the resurrection how to go about peacefully, how to dismiss themselves from situations that did not have peace. And then he taught them how to maintain peace. And it is so important that we look at that, especially in our day-to-day walk with the Lord. And again, the measures of peace that we often look for is that we look for the absence of problem or controversy. Well, just because there is no storm taking place or there's no major issue going on, the absence of conflict or state of rest does not mean we have peace. Oftentimes there are people who don't have peace within. If you look very carefully, we look at the illustration of the man in the Gadara cemetery, or the man that Jesus met on the other side of the storm. That man did not have peace within him. And oftentimes when people don't have peace, they have to be separated from our society. This is where we have areas of incarceration, sometimes even areas of mental restriction where people don't have internal peace. But when that man did, when Jesus gave him peace and calmed down, and I say dismissed the unauthorized demons, 6,000 of them, from a convention that was taking place on the inside of that man, when he evicted those people, the man then had peace. Jesus did not tell him to go anywhere else. He said, go back to your family, go home, because now you have the peace to be in their presence and it won't be a disturbing situation. I think this is so important that we must learn how to be peacemakers in our society. And I believe that when Chief Davis is approved by our city council after some scrutiny and examination, of course, this is a part of the process, I believe she will help us in community policing and in other ways to seek the peace. She gave some excellent examples, and a godly woman, a biblically godly woman. She's a member of a church in her community. I won't say where she'll be going to church here in Memphis, probably here at First Baptist Church, I don't know. But wherever she goes, I'm just glad she's a godly woman. Let me walk with you through several scripture that I believe are very important for us to look at. First of all, what is the relationship of peace and godly people and government? Peace, God, godly people, and government. This is important. And remember, we are fasting together in our homes. We're fasting. And listen, we cannot continue to live as the disciples were living after the resurrection, bottled up in a room, afraid in our society. We can't live that way. We can't normalize some of the behavior that we have seen. You can't normalize. The team put together these slides just to remind you of some of the things that have been going on in our society. And we can't normalize this kind of behavior where we have had children killed. We've had children over the last couple of years in our city. Their lives were taken when they were at places like the gas station and in their community, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old. And so these kinds of things, a 2-year-old, I believe, at one point, these kinds of things cannot be acceptable to us. And so that is not an area of police adjudication. That's an area where people don't have peace and resolution to their own issues, and they don't know how to resolve them without inflicting harm or violence on someone else. And oftentimes the person that they were aiming for or trying to hurt, someone else got caught in the crossfire or got caught up in the mix, so to speak. And we just can't continue to allow that to be an acceptable norm for our communities, for our cities, and for the places in which we dwell. We can't continue to go from week to week, Sunday to Sunday, week to week, Monday to Monday, or Friday weekends, and see 4 or 5 people killed over the weekend and wake up and just say, oh, well, that's what happens on the weekend in the city in which we live. So the first thing we got to do, and I believe Jeremiah 29:7 is important, and I've asked the staff to make sure that we had all of these, just the slide of the particular passage of Scripture to be placed up for you to read it, because I want you to read it in context on your own. But seek the peace of the city where I have sent you, is what the Lord says. For when you pray to the Lord on its behalf, it is in the peace of the city that you will find your peace. So I want to just drill down on that for a moment, because there is no disconnection just because it's not happening in your community. God tells us that we should seek the peace of the city. Now, these were exiles. These were people who were in exiles, if I put it in proper context. He says, I've caused you. I've sent you there. I have placed you there. You are there on purpose and by design. So apart from that, God tells them, pray for the city. So that's what we're doing right now. Pray for the city. Don't just get up and hear this stuff going on and say, look, I don't have anything to do with it. Yes, you do. Pray for the city, because in some way, the peace of the city is connected to our personal peace. The Lord says, pray to the Lord on its behalf. The Bible says, pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its peace you will find peace. Listen, if on your job, in your confined space, there is no peace, then in some way it's going to disrupt your performance. When there's a lot of disturbance and confusion going on. In your home, if there is no peace, it's going to impact the way you rest and the way you move about. In our city, if there is no peace, it's going to impact the way that business flows. It's going to impact the way that schools flow. Listen, every time a child is killed, we got to counsel a lot of kids for their grief. Every time a teacher is hurt, we got to talk to other teachers and get them to stay on the job. When police officers are hurt, when anybody's hurt, when innocent children and innocent people suffer, grief invades our life. We're worried. Oftentimes businesses make a decision as to whether or not they're going to move to our city. All of these things are important, so we have to seek the peace of the city. Pray for the city. And then the Lord tells us, obviously, one that we know very well, 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, if my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive their sin and give peace or heal their land. God wants to send healing. He wants to send peace, but it only comes when people work with police. I'm doing this for a purpose because I don't want to lump all of this in the hands of Chief Davis and say, here, you fix it. You just walked in the door and you took a job and everybody say, here, you fix it. No, we have to do it too. We have to pray. We have to pray for our city. Then we got to participate. We got to be peacemakers in the participation process. Listen, let me give you a prayer agenda. Third passage of Scripture, then we're going to get out of your way. 1 Timothy chapter 2. 1 Timothy 2, verse 1. First of all, I urge that supplication, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, especially for rulers and leaders who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life. Add the mayor to your agenda. Add the police director to your agenda. Add the president to your agenda. Add all of those people. Because listen, when those individuals who write policy and those individuals who make decisions, whether good or bad, they impact our lives. When the gun law in Tennessee, and I'm getting out on deep water here, when it was passed, I was still praying for people, hey, have a clear mind and don't pass that law. But I was praying for them because we're going to see on July 1st, when this law is a measure that has come forward, it has been signed, more people will be able to own guns and walk around openly carrying them without training. This is the key. It's the training. It is the proper training and use of a gun that we are trying to make sure that people restrict. So we got to pray, and you got to pray for people who make decisions. Listen, I tell people, pray for your pastor. He makes or she makes decisions every day that impact the spiritual lives of people. Pray for your parents. Look, your children, pray for your parents. I know parents, we ought to be praying for our children, but listen, a healthy person, a healthy mom, a healthy dad, pray for them, especially if they are the provider for where you reside. We got to pray for people who are in positions of authority. Pray for CEOs, pray for the right heart, the right mind. And when you pray, the boomerang effect of that prayer is this: it comes back to you. You pray that they make right choices, that you lead a peaceful life. That's the important part of that particular verse. One more verse, two more, and I'm going to get out of your way. Romans 13:1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Listen, our structures are not perfect, but they are ordained by God. He put them in place and allows them to be in place. And if he does not want them in place, he will remove them from place. I know it will happen. So we have to pray for that. So listen, I'm going to stop right now. I want you to stay tuned in to this Bible study. Listen to this interview. It gives us some insight on the vision and direction in our city is headed if we are to select Saralyn C.J. Davis as our next police chief for the city of Memphis. I wholeheartedly believe that we're moving in the best and the right direction. I commend those local candidates who did submit themselves. This is not a rejection of who they are and what they offer. It is simply a choice as we reimagine policing to bring in one who may or may not have had full connection to this department over the years, but can help us to reimagine what it looks like to live in a safer community. God bless you until we meet again. I believe we'll be fine again, and we'll be fine again when we see each other again.
Hi, I'm Deidre Malone, President and CEO of the Carter Malone Group, a Vice President of the NAACP Memphis branch, and immediate past President of the NAACP Memphis branch. I'm here with Mayor Jim Strickland this morning. He has a major announcement. Mayor Strickland.
Thank you, Deidre. Today, I'm announcing my appointment of the next leader of the Memphis Police Department and the next Chief of Police for the city of Memphis. Saralyn C.J. Davis is currently Chief of Police in Durham, and she's the right person to lead this department here in Memphis. She has an outstanding career in law enforcement as an officer and as a leader. She has a strategic vision for reducing violent crime. And she has a record of building relationships with the communities she serves. So I'm excited about this appointment. Welcome, CJ, to Memphis. I look forward to your meeting with the city council members and the community at large and your confirmation in May.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Welcome, Chief Davis. Welcome to Memphis.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mayor Strickland, what was it about Chief Davis that made you want to select her as the next police chief for Memphis?
Well, first I want to say we had an outstanding group of 8 individuals who applied for this. But I think Chief Davis stood out for several reasons. Number one of which is just leadership. At the Atlanta Police Department and Durham, in national organizations, She's a leader who keeps up with best practices on what's going on and can lead a department to try to drive down violent crime, as I said, and also work with neighborhoods, building relationships, community policing, and building consensus in the community to try to get them all on the same page to try to reduce crime and make it safe and improve the quality of life. And what I've tried to do at City Hall is to hire really good leaders. And I think Chief Davis is fantastic.
So Mayor, Chief Davis was one of the last people to enter the race as a candidate for police chief for the city of Memphis. And you had some local candidates as well. What do you say to Memphians in terms of specifically what she had that those other candidates didn't have that made you want to select Chief Davis?
Well, first of all, those local candidates were outstanding, and we value them very much and want their leadership in the Memphis Police Department. And we're working on those relationships to try to build them even stronger. But what I didn't say I was going to hire somebody internal or external. Okay. I was just going to look for the best possible person, man or woman, outside of Memphis or inside of Memphis, and it was all leadership. All the candidates talk about, reducing crime and their record. They were all great police officers, but Chief Davis, I think, has a unique quality that she's was near the very top of the Atlanta Police Department, very close to similar city to Memphis, and then ran a department in Durham, and was really, frankly, the only candidate who'd run a department during the pandemic. Was chief of police during the pandemic. So you put all those things together, and you'll see in a second when you hear her talk. You want to work for her. You want to follow her leadership, and it's that kind of dynamic leadership that I wanted to tap into.
And so, Mayor, what are your expectations for the chief?
Kind of what I laid out at the beginning, that she be a leader in the effort to reduce crime, particularly violent crime. It is not just a police matter. So it's not just, she's not solely responsible for that, but I think she has to be a leader in that effort. And part of that is building relationships with the community, and for a lot of different reasons, because you want the community to feel free to share information with police departments to help you solve crimes. And you also want to build faith in the community. I think the vast majority of Memphis has faith in the Memphis Police Department, but there are certain segments that don't. And I think we got to reach out to them and do a better job. And I think Chief Davis is perfectly suited for that.
Chief,
yes.
I want to go ahead and just get right to it. I want Memphians to get a good feel for who you are. What do you want Memphians to know about?
Well, first of all, I would love for them to know that I have a great appreciation for the city of Memphis. I have done my homework, not just because of this selection process, but just following the history of the civil rights movement, which is near and dear to my heart, being raised in the city of Atlanta and serving a department that I work very closely with civil rights icons. So I know the history of Memphis. I feel that my work has aligned with the work that the Memphis Police Department, the men and women there have been so close to as well. So I want the citizens of Memphis to know that I understand the plight that we all face with gun violence and various types of violent crimes, not just here in the city of Memphis, but last year was just a devastating year for police agencies around the country. And I understand that, and I understand how it affects the most vulnerable neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that are mostly distressed, those neighborhoods that have come to know gun violence as the norm. It shouldn't be that way. And we owe it to our communities, whether it's here in Memphis, whether it's in the city of Atlanta or Durham, where I currently am, that they should live in a way that's a quality of life that others enjoy. So my heart has always been in the community. I am also an individual that is very active in the community, not just in the uniform, but out of the uniform. I care a lot about young people and the future of our young people. So it's an honor for me to even be considered for a city like Memphis. This is a major city, and this is, a career achievement for me as well. I come from, working a career in a large agency similar to the city of Memphis, chief of police in a mid-sized agency, and now I have an opportunity to lead a large agency, which I feel like I'm qualified to do.
Well, what is it that attracted you to just the field of law enforcement?
Well, I grew up in a military family. My father is a career military man. It was 6 of us. He traveled around the world with us. And I grew up in a life of structure, a life of service, a life that my parents taught us to care about, other people. And the first opportunity that I had to go into law enforcement, my parents talked me out of it. They said, no, we don't want you to do that. And I got to a point in my early 20s that it was just, you can't talk me out of this. This is something that I'm very passionate about and have always been interested in the criminal justice field. And that's what my bachelor's degree is, in criminal justice as well. And much to my parents' surprise, they were very supportive themselves and enjoyed watching my career progress.
When you look at the past police directors here in Memphis, they've all been male. Yeah. You will be our first female police, not director, but chief.
Yes.
What are your thoughts around that distinction?
Well, we have to make that distinction because it's an accomplishment for any female to lead an agency like Memphis. But I would like for people to look at me as just as qualified as those males that have served the department and brought their talents and their skill sets. I can do the exact same thing. And, with a different perspective too. So it's like I said, it's an honor to be the first. It's an honor to be the first African-American female. So, women are moving into spaces that we haven't had an opportunity to move in before, and we're demonstrating that we're qualified.
You are so qualified. I mean, I've had a chance to kind of read your CV and just very, very impressed with your growth, and you're moving up the ranks when it comes to law enforcement. And you had a challenge though in Atlanta.
I did.
I want to ask you about that. I know you were fired from the force. Can you kind of walk us through that so people can understand what happened?
Absolutely. And that was a very devastating time for me, especially someone who was upwardly mobile in a department, always crossed all of my T's and dotted all of my I's, and I took pride in that. That's the person that I was. And to have an accusation by a couple of investigators who had basically botched an investigation and really needed somebody to blame it on. These 2 investigators indicated that I knew about the fact that they had evidence, and they had had it for years prior to my appointment in their particular work environment. And I had an opportunity to either take the blame as a supervisor or fight. And taking the blame would have been easy. That would have been the easy route for me. But I knew I needed to fight what was wrong. I needed to fight for my reputation. And that's what I did. And I knew that the truth would not come out unless I fought. And I don't even think it was ironic that the 2 accusers resigned the day before my hearing. And I think that was telling for everybody at the time. But to make a long story short, I was exonerated. And after being exonerated, went back to work, the work that I love, and was celebrated for fighting, because sometimes people need to see individuals stand up for what's right. And then I was not just promoted, I was skipped over rank and then promoted to major. Where I should have been in the first place. And then I went on to be promoted to deputy chief in the city of Atlanta. and ended a great career in 2016. So I have no regrets, and I wasn't bitter. You know, with the saying, bitterness is the poison that you take and hope someone else dies from it. And I felt like life needed to move on.
With everything that's going on across the country when it comes to law enforcement, just thinking about the trial of the officer Chavin and the George Floyd trial that's going on, and then having the young 20-year-old killed by a police officer in Minnesota, all this going on in the same week. What are your thoughts around what you can bring to our city, specifically working with law enforcement to try and you can't ensure it, but put something in place to make sure those types of incidents don't happen in our city?
Absolutely. You know, this is a very painful time in our country. This is a very difficult place for the law enforcement industry, because time and time again we have failed, and we have. And I have said over and over again, I sit on panels around the country about police reform. And as an African American woman who gets up in the morning without the uniform on, I understand that there is work to be done. There's much work to be done to build those relationships. So there's a lot that we can do here in Memphis. There is a lot that we can do on the national stage, because what happens in the city of Durham, or the city of Atlanta, or the city of Memphis impacts the nation. And the nation needs to see that we need our police officers. We have officers that get up every day to really protect and serve. They don't get up in the morning thinking that they're going out to hurt somebody or kill somebody. And we need to be able to build that trust with our communities by showing them that we're not just going to respond to, you know, a call because something bad has happened. We're going to establish the relationship before we have some type of crisis.
You're moving into, like Atlanta was, an activist community. And so what do you bring to Memphis from that perspective? I know that you believe in community policing. How are you going to work with the community to get them to have a level of trust in our police department?
Well, I believe you have to meet people where they are. I really do. I think that, you know, not just the chief, but every individual in a police department is an ambassador for the city. And we have to build relationships as a force multiplier. Every officer, from the officer on the beat to the command staff to the chief, we have to buy into the same philosophy that, as Robert Peel said, the police are the community and the community are the police. And we have to work together and stop rolling out various types of programs and all of the things that we think communities need. We need to ask our community, what do you want from your public safety entity? What do you want from your police department? And find time to be, you know, in those difficult conversations sometimes, even with activists. They deserve space to exercise their First Amendment rights. And in Durham, that's what we've allowed them to do. You know, even as I'm here right now, I had protests in Durham last night. But my staff has learned that it's not all about wearing mobile field force gear and getting in front of people who are already angry, who have reasons to be angry, that we need to give individuals their space to protest as long as it's done peacefully. And then if it's time for us to protect, you know, the community from property damage or vandalism or whatever, we're there to do that as well. But for the most part, give people an opportunity to protest peacefully.
How do you define community policing?
Well, I kind of touched on it before. You know, it has to be baked into the police department. It can't be a check the box, everybody took community policing, you know, courses or cultural diversity courses or implicit bias courses. It has to be the way we operate every day, the way we give respect to community members, because we're there for them. You know, it's not the other way around. We're there for them. So it's important for us to be able to demonstrate to those individuals who do in fact pay our salaries that we're there to keep them safe and establish those relationships that are so needed, not just in neighborhoods, but also with civic organizations and businesses. Everybody needs to play a part in community policing.
Chief Davis, I know you've done your homework on Memphis, specifically the Memphis Police Department. What do you view as some of the challenges we currently have? And it just, I know you haven't had a chance to really kind of dig into it, but some of the potential solutions, just based on your experience.
Yeah. Well, I believe in maximizing manpower. Sometimes you can't get the additional officers that you really need. And sometimes you really need to take a surgical look at what you have. And are we using the individuals that we have to the best of our ability? And it doesn't mean that that's not happening here, but what I would like to do is really take a really close look at, staffing levels and our officers being overworked. Sometimes, especially in this environment, we have a pandemic going on, we have all kinds of issues around the country, and of course, every city has an increase in crime. And that's a lot on an officer every day. So officer health and wellness is important. Are we getting the best out of each individual? Are they coming to work stressed? Are they coming to work without the type of training that they need? So it's important for us to really just take a surgical look and just do an evaluation, an assessment, if you will. I use the Saralyn model sometimes to just, scan it, do an analysis, and then just, respond just based on that information. I know that there's great work that has been done in this police department, and I sincerely hope that, my skill set and my experience can only build upon that.
Chief, you mentioned something around mental health, and in a Washington Post article, Chuck Wexler, Executive Director of the Police Executive Research Forum, an independent research organization devoted to improving policing, stated, "We have to get American police to rethink how they handle encounters with the mentally ill." What do you think about this statement, and how would you lead MPD to address mentally ill citizens differently in our community?
Absolutely, and historically, officers have been called to respond to situations that initially the call was not related to mental illness. Mm-hmm. But once they get there, they realize that, okay, this person obviously is having challenges. Years ago, there were resources that, an officer could pass an individual on to someone who can get them the help that they need. Today, not so much. Officers are responsible for mitigating all kinds of situations. And crisis intervention training is really, really important. Not just to have a crisis intervention team, but to have officers throughout the department that are trained in crisis intervention. Because it doesn't matter if it's a mental illness call, it could be a domestic violence call, and you get there and a child, a teenager, or even a spouse may be suffering from a mental illness kind of situation. So when you train all of your officers in crisis intervention, it's better outcomes for everyone, because then the officer has an opportunity to step back and take a look at whether or not, is this a situation that we need to arrest someone, or is this a situation where we need to get some different kind of help?
I'm looking at the current crime statistics for Memphis, particularly for homicide and aggravated assaults, what when you look at it, it's like we're up here in Memphis for aggravated assaults, like 22%. When you look at homicide, at this point, we're up about 47%. What are some of the violent crime strategies you think we need to implement here in our city?
Yeah. Well, violent crime is a heavy lift for every chief right now.
Okay.
Last year, COVID brought about a different type of environment for everyone. And even prior to COVID, there were increases in aggravated assaults because guns are everywhere now. This is an environment where there's an affinity for guns. So my approach to violent crime is that you look at your aggravated assaults just as seriously as you do your homicides. Because your aggravated assaults, meaning someone fired a weapon at somebody, means somebody got lucky that they're not a homicide victim. So the individuals that are shooting guns and aggravated assaults, those individuals need to be addressed just as seriously as that suspect who committed a homicide. So it's sort of a holistic approach, and not really just in the police department, but everybody that's a part of that process needs to be on the same page about what makes a good case. How do we have our federal partners to assist us? How do we have our task forces to assist us? How do we have other entities in city government to help? You got to have some prevention, parks and recreation, you know, other civic organization, our clergy. Our churches have amazing reach in our communities. Everybody needs to be engaged on the preventive side, and then there are going to be times where we're not going to be able to help individuals who have demonstrated that they will be dangerous and they will hurt someone. Those individuals will have to be prosecuted through our prosecutorial system with our DA, and we need to work with them so that those prosecutions can happen, because repeat offenders spend, you know, it's at least 20% of people in the community that commit 80% of the crime. Most communities have good law-abiding people. And then there's this group of individuals who continue to repeat and commit violent crimes over and over again. And those are the individuals that we would be focused on.
You're looking at coming into a state where the legislature just approved that anybody can have a gun without a permit.
Open carry without a permit.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. What are your thoughts around that?
That's challenging. That's very challenging, and I think it's very inconsiderate. I hate to say it like that, but I think it's very inconsiderate to communities that are already struggling with gun violence. And when you put officers in a situation where they can't address suspicious individuals because they're walking around with weapons, you know, that makes it very complicated. So that means we have to really sit back and look at what the new approach is going to be, because this is just another workaround. And that's what law enforcement is. When laws change, we have to figure out a way to work around this new complex kind of situation and still get the job done.
You know, Mayor, when I think about, I know you've been recruiting for a long time, trying to get the complement up of police officers. How are we doing?
We were doing great before the pandemic.
Okay.
We had dropped down to almost 1,900 officers in like 2017, and we built it up in 2019 to 2,100 officers. So that was a good net increase. What's happened during the pandemic is we've had to limit the size of our classes and limit the number of classes because you have to socially distance and all that. So our Chief of Human Resources, Alex Smith, and MPD are working on this August getting a class back up to a size where we want it to be. So, but the last 12 months have been tough, so we've probably had a net decrease. I know we've had a net decrease in the last year, but we got to roll up our sleeves and start building it back up.
So Chief Davis, you know, once you are confirmed as the next Chief of Police for the city of Memphis, you have an opportunity to groom the next level of law enforcement officers in this community. What would be a couple of your first steps in doing that?
Well, I think leadership training is really important at the very beginning of an officer's career. And the reason I say that is because in Atlanta, I helped to roll out the Atlanta Police Leadership Institute. And that program was really about making sure that officers began their careers with leadership skills. And before you could even go to the next level to be an investigator or a supervisor, you had to sort of graduate through various types of very important fundamentals in order to move to that next rank, and so on through your career. But at the end of it, you really saw that leader that had all of the skill sets that are so important in this work. instead of giving folks the rank and then expecting them to do the job without giving them all of the necessary tools that they need. So I really see looking at the organization as a whole, to brand the organization in a way that the officers are proud of the fact that they have the skills that they need to do the job. The community is proud. They'll be able to see that as well. But mentoring is really important too. Formalized mentoring kinds of programs and things, and making sure that, I mean, this isn't easy work, and officers are sent out on the street quite frequently after they graduate from the academy. They do their oath, and even though they have some level of training, they need mentoring throughout their careers as well.
Chief, what would you do to try and get young people, our youth, to see that they shouldn't be afraid of the police?
You know, I think that's part of that community policing, being part of the culture of the department, taking opportunities to just have conversations with young people, even if it's not a situation where the police were called. Just to take that time makes a difference in building that relationship. And if you think about 1,900 to 2,000 officers embracing that concept, what that would do, you know, for this industry, it may not have a rippling effect around the country, but it certainly would here in the city of Memphis. So I say that, you know, for young people, we need you to be police officers. We need you to help change the game. We need you to come and serve your community because you come from, you know, this community. And we want, you know, more young people to understand, you know, the rigors of the job, but at the same time that it's a very rewarding career.
Chief, my final question for you. What do you want to say to Memphis as the City Council contemplates your confirmation on why you want to be the next chief of police here in Memphis?
Well, as I said before, for me, it's an honor. It really is. It's an honor to be able to lead a city, as I said before, that has such rich history, that reminds me of my career and my roots and my passion. And it doesn't matter what city you're in, if you love people, if you love service, then you can be a part of that family. I look forward to being a Memphian. I really do. And I look forward to meeting our council members so that they can, you know, see who I am as a person as opposed to just, you know, a professional. I know I bring a lot to the table. I continuously work on me. I'm a career learner. And I also want to stay connected on the national stage because I really believe that our industry needs voices like mine, you know, to talk about what the future of policing should look like.
Good luck, Chief.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We look forward to you being our next chief of police here in Memphis.
Thank you so much.
On your job, please. Late in the midnight hour, please, please. Hallelujah. Yeah. Please. I guarantee there'll be peace. I know that it will be. So peace. When there's confusion. You have peace. Peace, oh, peace. When you don't know which way to turn, God says peace. He guarantees.